anyone who's tried to lose weight, struggle with self-control, found themselves sitting on a couch and devouring a bag of chips before they even realize it, they're going to get a lot out of this episode, and so am I, because I know while I'm not overweight and I'm in good shape, I too have struggled with emotional eating at times in my life. And one of the biggest challenges I think we all face, especially women who go through menopause, when they also have hormonal fluctuations and it can be a very emotional time, are these signals that their body's sending them can be mistaken for hunger. And there are lots of ways, like weight loss strategies, but learning how to recognize those signals your body's sending you and to eat only when you're hungry is perhaps one of the best strategies that any of us can learn. Instead of relying on these external rules, learning to listen to your own body. I'm here to talk today with Dr. Deb Butler, who she's developed an amazing system that I'm excited to learn more about and share with you, that helps women understand the signals their body's sending them, listen more to those, and really achieve long lasting health and weight goals without having to diet or being on these strict diets for the rest of their life. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm excited to learn more.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too. And I'm excited to hear everything that you said. And I'm so glad that I said that because,
That's right.
because it's like when I think about when I was in my 50s and menopause was upon me, and I was going to Weight Watchers. I was a lifetime Weight Watcher member. And I was a chiropractor at the time, and I was educated. And I thought Weight Watchers was a great diet plan. The way that I used it as an educated woman was that I was a lifetime member because I hit my goal and I got to go for free as long as I was around my goal. And if I wasn't at my goal, I had to pay. And the way I use Weight Watchers is I used it to lose the same 20 pounds that I would gain when I stopped doing Weight Watchers. So I would go back and forth. I would figure I gained and lost 250 pounds in my lifetime doing that kind of scenario. And being a fairly smart woman, I felt like I had my weight under control because I had a diet plan that could get my weight off when I gained it. So I was following Weight Watchers and doing a point system to me, which meant getting as many points as I could. And I didn't care as much what it was as opposed to that I just didn't eat too many. And then once my weight was down, then I would go back to eating foods that had no fuel value just because I knew I could eat them because I didn't have to lose weight. And that's kind of what I did all the way into my 50s as my way of controlling weight. And I felt that it was a pretty good thing. And once I hit my 50s and I started going through menopause, those little things didn't work as well because the weight didn't come off. And I also wasn't as happy in my career as a chiropractor, so I was a little bit more frustrated, which means that I was eating more and drinking more as a way of not to feel the frustration of being in the job that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And it was actually through those kind of things that I started looking for something else because I wanted to work with people. I wanted to help get into the minds of people because when I was working with my patients, I could always tell them what to eat and I could tell them what to do, but why didn't they do what I told them? And why didn't I do what I knew? And I knew that it had a lot to do with what was going on in our minds. And so I became very interested in the whole idea of life coaching at a time when life coaching wasn't really a known thing 15 years ago. Just like when I became a chiropractor 35 years ago, nobody really knew what a chiropractor was. But through starting to learn a little bit more about the mind, one thing one of these coaches asked a group of people, she was a weight coach, was, why do you eat when you're not hungry? And it really opened up my mind to the idea of because I didn't, I as educated as I thought I was, I really didn't think about being hungry or full. I just cared about getting as full as I can and getting as much food as I could because I was so afraid of being hungry and I also didn't want to gain weight. And when she asked that question, and we were going through all the ideas of why we think what we think and what causes our feelings, I started really looking at two questions is do you know when you're hungry and do you know when you're full? And it changed everything for me in terms of counting Weight Watcher points and just sitting down to eat and going, am I hungry? Am I full? And if I'm full, why am I eating? So at 55 or 56 years old, that's when I started this journey of using food in a way to not only help me be healthier, but also to find out what's going in my mind when I'm putting food in my mouth when I'm not hungry. And that's basically what I do for people now is when you put food in your mouth when you're not hungry, there's something going on, and I love to find out what's going on.
It can't be as simple, I imagine, as just saying, "Am I hungry or am I not hungry?" I've tried that too, and I know other people. My wife has tried that, and there's still emotional triggers that happen where it's hard to just be that conscious and considerate, all the time, and things that override that. And so, looking at those patterns that people have, tell me more and let's dive into that a little bit deeper because unless correct me, maybe I'm wrong, it just doesn't seem like it can just be as simple as somebody asking themselves the question, am I hungry or not? Because I can say no, I'm not hungry, and then still end up unconsciously with my hand in a bag of chips.
Well, I always start with those first two questions. And it's the reason that most people even hire me to begin with is because they already, you would think that you would already know when you're hungry and that you would know when you're full. But I use a physical hunger scale that goes from a negative 10 to a plus 10 to start really just checking in with your body about how hungry you are and how full you are, because I just don't even think we do that. It's
Right.
like I know that you might know that you're eating when you're not hungry, but do you know how full you are to begin with, or do you know if you're hungry? So if the scale goes from a negative 10 to a plus 10, I recommend eating between the twos, which is starting at a negative 2, which is a whisper of hunger, and stopping at a plus 2, which is a whisper of fullness. Even though you could go up to a 10, or you could wait till you're a negative 8 to eat. So many people, when they're eating, when they start just looking at when they're eating and when they're stopping, is the beginning of awareness of what's going on in your body. It's not as simple as eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're
Right.
full. But first, you have to know your own numbers. It's like I know that little kids don't think about, oh, I'm a negative 2, I should eat. They just eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full. But if we've been living by external diets and external things, we lose that connection with ourselves. So the first thing I do is help people relearn that connection.
Well, I'm not even sure people learned it in the first place, many people.
I would say, well, we're wired already to do
Yeah.
that. I mean, our bodies are wired to, we have all kinds of things going on in our body that tells us it's time to eat and it's time to stop. So when I put numbers on it, I only do it because we've lost that connection and it's there. We've
Right.
just ignored it and we relearned how to do something different instead of what's actually innate in us.
It's interesting
So,
because it slows down the decision. So it puts
mm,
a little bit of a distance in my mind from just if I said, am I hungry or not? It's a yes or no. It's a quick answer. And then I can just move on. But having to
right.
then put a number on it and think about it on a scale makes me pause even longer to
Yes.
consider my decision instead of it becoming just this response. And
Correct.
I
Yes.
think that that's what I'm learning so far in talking to you, which
Yes.
seems quite valuable. I mean, really helpful. Just slow down a little bit.
I think that's slow down. And the, it's like women, especially who are in menopause, and most of the women that I work with who have been struggling with weight their whole life, and menopause is making it harder than ever. have lost that basic connection, and menopause is not going to make that easier. It makes it harder, which is kind of like the best time to do this. It's because, like, this is a really good time to get connected because it's not just how hungry are you and how full you are. It's also what kind of pain levels do you have? When do you decide to take care of it? How tired are you? When do you decide to put yourself to sleep? All of those connections are all the same thing as eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. And I think there's many women that get to this stage of life and do not have that connection. They push through
Right.
tiredness. They push through pain. They push through a fullness. They wait too long to eat. And then we wonder, why are we sitting on the couch eating bonbons?
Right. Is there, what hormonal changes occur that impact hunger in menopause? I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with the hormones that change and the different balances that occur, but how do those specifically affect hunger?
The way I look at it with menopause, emotions get stronger.
Mm.
And if you have been an emotional eater, in other words, if you've eaten when you're not hungry, and I think we all do that at times, and I don't
Right.
think you have to have a weight issue. I think it's if you've trained your brain to fill emotional holes with food or not. If that's how you've learned how to handle your emotions is by eating, then when you hit menopause, you are hungrier than you have ever been. That's what people say to me. I'm more hungry than I've ever been, but it's not
Interesting.
physical hunger. But if you're not connected, a lot of us don't know the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. It feels the same sometimes in the body if you don't know the difference.
And so how does somebody recognize the difference? If it feels
Well,
the same, how do you recognize the difference?
well, first I start with feeling the physical hunger so that I would say like in the first 2 weeks that I work with somebody, we just work on the physical hunger scale so that you can start telling the difference of when you're eating and you're actually filling up your gas tank. And you can feel those numbers. You can feel them go down and you can feel them go up. So we always start with connecting to physical hunger and physical fullness. Once you get that, and you know, say that you're at a +2 and you're still eating, you have now gone into the emotional hunger scale. You are not in the physical hunger scale anymore. You have now hit what I call emotional holes. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. And where does food quality fit into this? And how fast somebody is eating, or if they're sitting in front of a television while they're eating, is this part of the dynamic and picture that you think plays into this as well?
Yeah, I think it plays into it, but I also think that, like, I think food quality is really important. I mean, I think food is medicine. And, but at the same time, I've known a lot of people who don't have a weight problem who don't eat healthy.
Right.
So it's not just the quality of food in terms of weight. But I do think that when you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, you start the beginning of like I think most of the people that I work with know what they need to be eating. And I think a lot of people would like to be eating that food a lot of the time. Like a lot of people will say to me, "Well, I eat healthy most of the time." But what I also like to teach people is that the quality of food is important, but it's also important to be able to eat a non-nutritious food without guilt.
Yeah, enjoy
And to be
yourself.
able to enjoy it
Yeah.
and to be able to have a mindfulness about it because I think you're going to do it. But I think if you do it and you think you can't do it, that's when you become mindless and you eat the foods with no nutritious value and no enjoyment, and you end up filling emotional
And it's
holes.
a way to do it guilt free.
It's the only way. It's like you're going to do it. I mean, I don't know anybody that will never eat a non-nutritious food. And
Right.
I don't want to be in that category where I can't. I just don't want to be eating potato chips or bonbons all day long. But I certainly, at least for me, I had a thing with potato chips. I didn't think if I had a bag of potato chips, I didn't think I could have a few. I would think I would have to eat the whole bag
Yeah.
or put hot water on it and throw it in the garbage can, or I couldn't handle it.
In
I
terms
mean,
of
I believed I couldn't control myself around potato chips,
and belief drives action for sure. So it
for
sounds
sure.
like you through this also you were able to change your belief through education and creating new habits, and that's what you're essentially reprogramming or helping people reprogram their relationship with food and create newer, healthier habits. So it's less of a you don't have to rely on willpower, or it's not such a conscious, difficult, challenging effort.
Willpower. I really think willpower
It doesn't work.
doesn't last.
No, it doesn't work. No.
And I agree with you. And I also think that as soon as you think you can't have something when it comes to food,
That's all I'm going to think about.
that's all your brain is going to think about. And
Yep.
I think we can retrain our brains to do anything. We've trained our brains to do that.
Right.
And we've trained our brains to fill emotional holes. We trained our brains to think, oh my God, I feel sad. And the brain goes, oh, well, we should eat. And not only that, sometimes that emotional hunger feels like it could be physical hunger, which is what you were asking me earlier, is that emotional hunger, our emotions live in our bodies too. So physical hunger, I'll have usually my clients, I'll ask them to start describing what physical hunger feels like in their bodies.
Yeah.
And for everybody, it's different. It's not always in the stomach. Sometimes people feel it in their heads. Sometimes they feel weak. Sometimes they feel shaky. But emotions, like for me at least, when I'm upset, I feel it in my stomach. Now, when I'm hungry, I also feel it in my stomach. Now, if I'm hungry and I'm upset, I might feel starving.
Right.
I might, and that's why I like to separate the emotional hunger from the physical hunger because when people can really separate, like I'm starving. Okay, well, I ate like an hour ago. I'm not sure why I'm hungry. And we start going through what might have been going on, and we really can see that their physical hunger was, say, at a -1 or a 0. Like there was a little bit there. The body could be saying, well, we could put something in there. But they were really upset about something. And so their emotional hunger, we can measure emotional hunger from 0 to a -10. Maybe what they were really feeling was like a -5 in emotional hunger and a -1 in physical hunger. And you put those two things together, and it can feel like you're ravenous, even though it's not all physical hunger. Does that make sense when I
It
say
does. So
that?
you did, yeah, and learning how to tease that apart and identify those different components is helpful for creating different decisions and different habits. So what's interesting to me is you mentioned, people will respond to emotions through eating, and that's the habit that they've developed, while other
Correct.
people have developed habits perhaps to when they're emotional to go exercise. And it's what the body then starts to crave. And so over time, I'm certain that as people's eating habits change and the system becomes more ingrained, it really just becomes more of an unconscious habit that people then have healthier responses to stress, and maybe instead of eating, they're going to develop a healthier way of dealing with the stress as well. It's not just food. I imagine there are probably ancillary benefits to this where people then are also understanding more about how stress affects them, and
Yeah.
probably changing through time over time how they then are able to deal with those situations
Yeah. And also, like when we're talking about emotions, probably the most important thing about emotions is actually being able to feel them.
instead of numbing them
Uh,
with food.
Instead of sometimes even instead of exercising, even instead of
Oh,
distracting
that's a good
yourself.
point. Yeah, people do. They can numb their emotions with
Well,
exercise.
I work with a lot of people that
That's interesting.
overexercise,
Right.
because, and I think it's the body's natural response to move when it's stressed. So I think it's a very natural, innate thing to do. You feel stress, the body wants to move.
Right.
But also that when you feel negative emotion, I think it's really helpful if you're not afraid to feel it, because if you're not afraid to feel it, it actually becomes a superpower.
Right. Let me ask,
And
let me ask you. I want to just
yeah,
pivot a little bit here because
sure.
GLP-1s are such a huge industry now. Ozempic
Yes,
and other Wegovy and other
yes,
medications. They do create phenomenal weight loss results,
yes.
undoubtedly. One of the concerns I have about them, though, is that as people go through and they're losing weight, they're not learning how to eat healthier. They're not developing necessarily new habits. Many people I go through, I'm sure there's some clinics who work with people on that, but overall, the people that I've seen and talked to who are taking these, they're not really changing the basic foundational emotion, physical understanding of their food, how they're eating, what they're eating, so that when they come off of it, they oftentimes just bounce right back up. They start putting weight back on.
Hmm.
I'm curious to know if you've worked with patients, and I'm sure you have, who are on GLP-1s and what that process is like and how you view that medication in this context.
I think I think that one thing I find about that is that what the literature says and what people say is that it calms down the food noise.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've heard that.
And everybody that I work with has a lot of food noise, a lot of things going on about food and emotions and filling and eating. And I think that the thinner piece process that I use also calms down the food noise. So I think that in itself is just really important that there are other ways to calm the food noise down other than a medicine.
But when people come off the medicine, the food noise comes back.
Yeah,
And so I guess that's where my question is. I mean, first of all, have you worked
I have. I
with
actually
patients who
I
are
have.
also using GLP-1s at the same time?
I have. I
And,
have worked with a few, and um, the good thing about working with people who are on the medication and doing my work at the same time is they have an opportunity to work with the emotions at the same time, because emotions don't go away just because you're on the medicine.
yeah,
I still have found that when they go off the medication, I still see that it's very, very difficult for them to maintain what they did. I still find that it's difficult. And I have found that there are some people where it's not. So there must be so much involved in terms of body types and of who might be able to do better with it than others. I don't really have the answer to it, other than to know that the thing that calms down the most is food noise, and anything that we can do without medicine that will help that food noise in your head, which I think is if we can retrain the brain without medicine, that's where the answer is. And I'm not against the medicine either, because I do work with some people that even when I use this process, it still doesn't calm it down.
right. Well, I don't think there's any, one
I
thing
don't think there's
for
any one
every
thing
single
either.
person. I don't,
I don't either.
yeah. But to be able to reprogram this relationship and this understanding to food without the medication is very powerful. Without, as you said, Weight Watchers and other systems where it's a point system and it's this yo-yo weight loss, weight gain, and it's essentially you have to be within their system for the rest of your life and paying them this money as a subscription or whatever they have in order to essentially maintain what you're doing, buy their food, buy their products. And what you're offering and what you do is really a brain retraining, which is a physical retraining of the mind and body connection. Am I understanding that correctly?
I would say that's exactly, yes, you said it exactly the way I would say. You keep saying everything I would want to say, right out of like you're taking it out of my
And we
head.
just met.
I know it, but I really agree with that. And I also think that at least for me and for a lot of the clients that I've worked with, it is so freeing when you believe you can control what you put in your mouth.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many smart women I work with who think they can't, who absolutely believe that if something that they like is sitting in front of them, they have to eat it. And I've been there, so I know what it's like. But it's like you can retrain your brain and you can learn that you control what goes in your mouth. Food does not jump into your mouth. You either put it in your mouth or you don't.
And do
And
diet diaries, kind of, or emotional diaries, charting or writing down
yeah,
your, is that part of this? Is that a helpful process? I've seen that used in other situations as well.
yes, I do use a thinner piece, what I call food journal. And it's really all about the numbers. It's about your emotional hunger scale numbers and your physical hunger scale numbers. And I talk about there's four types of eating. So you have to, it's kind of like it's very systematic in the beginning because you're kind of systemizing it in your brain
Right.
because your brain doesn't know what to do with it anymore. It's lost track of what to do with food.
But also the
So
reality is people's unhealthy eating habits and behaviors are a system as well. They've been
that's
systematized
true.
in people's lives. The habits is a, habits are systems that people have created.
Yeah.
And so I love that you have a system that's broken down for people to follow to begin to essentially deconstruct the way
Yeah.
they're living so they can reconstruct it in a healthy way that they can take with them essentially for the rest of their life.
I don't know what else to say.
It works. I mean it's a great approach that I'm a huge fan of, and I've been wanting to speak with somebody who seems to have cracked the code on this for a long time, and I'm so glad you came across my radar because I hadn't really found people that or anybody who would seem to have really created a system where they can walk people through this, and get the long-term results instead of putting them on a crash diet or putting them on
Yeah.
just on a medication, or relying too much on willpower and that sort of thing. How long have you been doing this with patients?
I would say 14 years.
Um,
I stopped practicing chiropractic about maybe, I don't know how many years it's been, and segued slowly into this. And I think what's so much fun is that if you can know why you're eating when you're not hungry and you're willing to see what you're feeling in midlife more than any other time in your life, you're going to find out where you need to go and who you need to be more so than any other time in your life. Just by, I love using food to find out what's going on in your head. I just use food to life coach people.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
We just use food.
Right.
But it's all about really what's going on in your head and what emotions are running around and what are you willing to feel and what aren't you willing to feel. And for me, as a chiropractor, I didn't want to feel that frustration that I was feeling about being a chiropractor. But as long as I could go out and eat and drink, I could go practice chiropractic because I was eating and drinking.
Yeah. You've been doing this for, over a decade.
Yeah,
In that time,
hard to believe.
typically what happens in people's, when they're developing systems or products, whatever it
Yeah.
is, early on they're learning new ways of improving where things have worked, where things haven't worked. What did you learn early on that maybe you've abandoned, that you found that approach really wasn't as effective, or did you really from the beginning you just had the perfect system and it's been the same ever since?
Ooh, oh boy. I'm sure there's got to be something. So I got to think about it for a second. You know, in the beginning, I didn't make people food journal. Like if somebody, because many people are against food journaling because they're coming from a diet mentality. So the idea of food journaling is like, oh God, I
There's
can't do that
resistance to
again.
that. Yeah.
And I would go, I wasn't real persistent about using a food journal.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how many years it took to go, I mean, still like when I work with people, some people really won't do it in the beginning, but they need coaching. I mean, there's reasons why they're not doing it, and I need to help them get through what they don't want to look at. But in the beginning, I just, okay, if you don't want a food journal, you don't have to. But it really took away from my coaching. But I think I was just trying to maybe be nicer to my clients or do
Yeah.
more of what they wanted.
But they weren't getting the results, it sounds
They
like,
weren't
that they
getting the
weren't.
result.
How long would
And
does somebody now, do they need to food journal for? I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, that you're not telling people they have to journal their food for the rest of their life.
that would not, and that is absolutely not the goal.
Right.
And as soon as, especially like when somebody will say to me in the beginning, when they're hesitant about food journaling, which is a lot of people, only because it reminds them of diets, and they'll have the thought, like, I don't want to have to do this for the rest of my life. And that's why they don't start it. And this is not something that you do for the rest of your life. This is what you do while you're working with me for the time being. It's short a period of time until you get what's going on inside of you.
And what's the average period of time,
It's
approximately, you
usually
think?
about 12 weeks.
Oh, that's totally reasonable. That's not a long
At
time.
least I'm gonna, like I think 3 months
Yeah.
is people have a pretty darn good awareness. Like they can do their numbers in their head.
Right. And it's that awareness they carry with them. So they've learned the tools to basically carry through for the rest of their life.
And
So,
the food journal, it kind of like is in their head.
right. Amazing.
And some people like to do it longer, and some people will go back and use it if they start feeling a disconnection.
Right.
It's a tool they can use whenever they want, but they don't have to use it for the rest of their life.
I love that. How can people learn more about you and your work? Where can they find out more information?
Well, the easiest place is my podcast, which is called Dinner, Peace, and Menopause. And I've
Mhm.
got like 500 episodes. So if you want to learn anything that I've been talking about today, just start at number one and you'll start learning and being able to use the tools that I'm talking about right now and start.
Amazing. I'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and I also have a quiz that I developed that helps people figure out which tool would be the best place to start.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And do you work with people all over the country, all over the world? Do they have to see
All
you
over
in
the
person?
world.
All over the world. Fantastic. And they can find out and contact you through your website, I'm assuming.
DrDebButler.com.
Love it. DrDebButler.com. All those links will be in the show notes. Thank you for
Fantastic.
spending some time. I love your approach. I loved hearing
Thank
about it.
you. I love talking to you.
So great to meet you.
Thank you.